Welcome to the second episode of MMA Weigh-In, sixth round for MMA Weigh-In. I'm Navid Razi in Dallas, and my world award-winning MMA journalist for USA Today and MMAJunkie.com, weighing in from Sin City, Las Vegas, John Morgan on the right side. And John, there's some news that came down that we've been talking about for the last 2 years, it seems. It seems inevitable, and that's that Strikeforce will probably fold up shop and close after this next event. And this is something that we've been talking about that I think should have happened for a long time. Strikeforce seemed to be just a very poorly run organization with no sense of direction, and I don't understand that because the blueprint was laid out by the UFC. They decided to end ties in the MMA game, and I also think Showtime did a very poor job in promoting Strikeforce and putting that package together. I think Gus Johnson was a mistake and not the right person for the job. So let's dive right into this, John. What do you feel about the end of Strikeforce, and is it time?
I think it is time. I think it's long overdue, to be honest with you, Navid. And that's no insult to Strikeforce. They put on some fantastic cards over the year. They had some fun events, and it was never about who was the best fighter in the world, but it was about putting on entertaining matchups that people wanted to tune in and see, and it was a lot of fun. But since they've been purchased by Zuffa and just the downhill relationship between Zuffa and Showtime, I think now's the time to close the doors. You've got guys like Luke Rockhold and Daniel Cormier and Gilbert Melendez that I want to see fight in the UFC, and I know they want to fight in the UFC too. And this is going to give them an opportunity to do that. So I think it's time to close the doors. I guess if there is one thing that I kind of regret, it's the fact that it never materialized into like a feeder system. I don't think Showtime ever wanted to be a feeder system, but I think that would have been great. What's wrong with tuning in to see guys that might be the next superstars in MMA? I think that's something, honestly, that still needs to happen on the landscape as well. I think the UFC needs a minor league.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that, and I think maybe the reason Showtime wasn't interested in that type of situation is probably for ratings. I'm not sure how many people would have tuned in to see amateur fights. We see amateur fights for free on TV all the time. I don't think the numbers are very high for those. So, look at The Ultimate Fighter. It's struggling horribly right now, probably because it's on Wednesday nights. But that brings us to the next point. Women coming into the UFC. Dana White has said for a long time that women would not come to the UFC just because of the division is so thin. And now Ronda Rousey is coming into the UFC. And I do get Ronda Rousey, John, but anybody not named Ronda Rousey, I don't understand coming into the UFC. Rousey has that kind of polarizing effect that a guy similar to a guy like Brock Lesnar had coming into the UFC. The difference being, of course, that Ronda Rousey is an Olympic medalist in judo, and she's a very skilled athlete, but I think she does have that same kind of polarizing effect that Brock Lesnar had. But I'm not sure how many people tune in to see her fights other than to see if her opponent can escape the armbar that everyone knows is coming.
Well, that's what's going to be interesting about this whole thing, Navid, because I think you're right. You can't argue about Ronda Rousey. She is the real deal. She has legitimate skills. She's fantastic on a microphone. She can talk trash with the best of them. And, she's easy on the eyes as well. So I think she is a superstar. She has that it factor about her. But how can her opponents, line things up? How can the division flesh out? That's what's going to be the key to whether or not this really works. I don't think it's about Ronda Rousey. I think it's about everybody else. I think there are some interesting fights for her. Sarah McMahon is an Olympic wrestling medalist. Shayna Baszler is not as great of a career record, but a fantastic grappler. Amanda Nunes, dangerous striker. We haven't really seen Rousey get tested on the feet. So I think there are some interesting fights out there, but I think what's going to be the key is, whether or not people will tune in. I think, you and I have talked about it before. MMA is still a niche sport. As big as we think it is, there are people in the world that just don't like two guys locking themselves in a cage and doing hand-to-hand combat. Now you make that women. Even Georges St. Pierre said this past week that he's not necessarily comfortable with it. And he's the damn champion of the UFC. So I'm intrigued by it. I'm a fan of female fights. I think Ronda Rousey's the real deal, and I can't wait to see how this pans out. But it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing is managed.
Yeah, I'm siding with the champ Georgie boy there. I don't really see how women fit into the sport of MMA as far as in the UFC. I think as far as Invicta and their own entity, I think it's great. But to me, it would kind of be similar as if you see an NBA playoff game, men's playoff, and then all of a sudden randomly there's some women playing at the same time. It makes no sense to me. I don't really see this thing fitting into
the
UFC's picture at all.
Here,
hey,
man.
I call it like I see it, man. But that's going to do it for the sixth round for MMA Weigh-In. For MMA Junkie, John Morgan, a brandly revamped MMA Junkie site, which looks very well. Be sure to check that out, and we'll catch you right here on the sixth round next week.